Jessica stood in the middle of her small Ugandan town, not because of wealth or connections, but because of something stronger, her unwavering spirit. Her hands were rough, worn by hard work, and her mind was sharp, driven by ambition. She wasn't someone who waited for luck to find her. Instead, she made her own chances. Her shoes were old, and her uniform patched, yet her teachers often whispered that she was meant for more. After finishing secondary school, when others were waiting for miracles, Jessica picked up a comb and a pair of scissors. She sat on a borrowed chair under the shade of a mango tree and started braiding hair. Slowly, her skill became known across the town. People didn't come to her just for the braids. They came because of her warm smile, the stories she told while weaving hair, and the kindness she gave to every person who sat in her chair. At home, Jessica lived simply with her parents and younger siblings in a small house that always smelled of boiled corn and love. Her mother worked in the market, selling vegetables, and her father was a welder, always serious and skeptical about everything. Life was hard, but Jessica made sure her family never went to bed without hope. One hot afternoon, as the sun burned overhead, Jessica bent over the hair of one of her regular customers, a woman named Grace. Grace was known for her wealth, elegance, and taste. Jessica had braided her hair before, but today was different. Today, her fingers moved like an artist's, every twist and turn in the braid made with intention. She had no idea that this moment would change her life forever. As Jessica tied the final knot, Grace turned to face her. "You're very gifted," she said, running her fingers through her freshly braided hair. "Have you ever thought about working abroad?" Jessica blinked, confused. "Abroad, Ma? I want to sponsor you," Grace said with a smile that seemed full of possibility. "I'll get you a job in a top salon in the U.S. You'll earn real money, far more than you ever will here." Jessica's heart raced. Her hands grew cold, her mouth dry. "Are you serious, Ma?" "I don't joke about opportunity," Grace replied. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. "Thank you, Ma. God bless you. I'd love that. I really would." That evening, Jessica rushed home, barely able to contain her excitement. She burst through the door, her face bright. Her mother's tears of joy flowed as she praised God. But her father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Are you sure she's not a scammer? Or worse, a ritualist?" "No, Daddy. I've known her for years. She's honest. She's helped me get many customers." Her father grunted, unconvinced. But Jessica felt a spark inside her. She knew this was a path she had to take, no matter how frightening. It was a chance for something more, something better, and she was ready. The days that followed were a blur: paperwork, photos, signatures. Jessica didn't even have a passport, but Grace took care of everything. In just a few months, Jessica was ready to fly across the world. The town buzzed with gossip. Some people said she was lucky. Others muttered about rich women and their secrets. But Jessica didn't listen. She kept her faith in her dreams. Before leaving, Grace insisted on meeting Jessica's family. "I want them to know who is taking their daughter across the world," Grace said. At the small family home, Jessica's mother served Grace juice and fried rice. Jessica's father sat silently, his arms crossed as usual. "I've seen how hard your daughter works," Grace began, "and I want to help her succeed. She'll live well. I've arranged a job for her with a trusted friend in the U.S. who owns a salon. She'll be safe. She'll thrive." Jessica's father studied her for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't resistance either. The day Jessica left was filled with emotion. Her mother held her tightly, her face streaked with tears. Her siblings cried, not fully understanding the goodbye. Her father stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, silent. But just before Jessica climbed onto the bus to the airport, he called out, "Just once, don't forget who you are." The journey was long and cold. The plane felt like a heavy metal box. Jessica couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with fear. What if she failed? What if her father was right? But when she landed, the skyline of the United States greeted her like a dream. Grace's friend, a stern but kind woman named Miss Angela, waited at the airport. "You'll start working in my salon tomorrow," Miss Angela said, her tone firm. "We take our work seriously here. Can you handle that?" "Yes, Ma," Jessica replied, her voice steady though her heart raced. The salon was a world of lights, mirrors, and people with impossible hair goals. Jessica worked like her life depended on it, because it did. She learned quickly, kept her head down, smiled often, and stayed humble. Miss Angela watched her carefully and nodded in approval. Every month, Jessica sent money back home. She made sure her brothers stayed in school. She rebuilt her mother's market stall after a fire. Even when there was little left for herself, she gave. Her room was small, and her meals were simple, but her heart was full of love. As the months turned to years, Jessica began to dream bigger. She didn't want just to work in a salon. She wanted to own one. Jessica continued to send money, school fees, medical bills, food, rent. Even when she had to skip meals or walk through the cold, she never let her family go without. Her mother always prayed over the phone. Her father, still distant, would just say, "Okay, I got it," before hanging up. But Jessica didn't care. She was willing to sacrifice everything. To her, love meant giving all she had. Then came the big moment. After saving for years, Jessica finally opened her own salon. It was small, cozy, and tucked into a quiet corner of Chicago. It wasn't flashy, but it was hers. Jessica stood by the door, her hand shaking as she turned the key. The door creaked open, and tears welled in her eyes. She had done it all on her own. No one to help, just hard work and faith. Her business had grown. Clients came to her from all over, calling her the Ugandan girl with magic hands. Then, she met Daniel online. His words were smooth, and his laughter lifted her spirits like nothing had in years. He promised a future, a life built together. He was in Uganda, a self-proclaimed businessman, full of talk about love. She wanted something for herself at last: love, companionship, a home. She started sending him money, at first small amounts, then more as time passed. Daniel promised to buy land for them, to build a house. "When you come home," he said, "we'll have our place, our future." Jessica believed him. She even sent more money to furnish the house, and when he asked for more to register a business, she didn't hesitate. After all, she had helped so many before. Why not the man who promised her forever? But one day, a message came through Facebook. It was Victoria, an old friend from back home. "Jessica, I'm sorry to disturb you," the message read. "I need help. It's my final year at university, and I don't have enough to pay my fees. I don't know who else to ask." Jessica's fingers moved across the screen quickly. She smiled and typed, "Send your account number." She sent more than Victoria needed, even telling her to keep the change. "You've always been kind," Victoria wrote back. "I'll never forget this." Jessica didn't know how much that simple act would matter in the end. As time went on, her family's life improved with her monthly remittances. Her father's small business grew, all thanks to Jessica's support. But when Jessica decided it was time to return to Uganda, to meet Daniel in person and test the love he promised, she had no idea what was waiting for her. She booked her ticket, no one else knowing, not her family, not even Daniel. 10 years had passed since Jessica last set foot in Uganda. The plane touched down, the wheels meeting the ground with a slight jolt. Her heart raced in her chest, pounding hard, her mind swirling with thoughts. This trip wasn't just about reunion. It was about truth. She needed to see who had been real and who had just used her success. The first stop was Daniel. She took a cab straight from the airport to the address he had given her, the house he said was theirs. She reached a sleek white gate. Her heart fluttered in a mix of hope and fear. She knocked once, but there was no answer. Stepping through the gate, she walked up to the door. Daniel appeared at the front, shirtless, his eyes wide with surprise. "Jessica, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, trying to gauge his reaction. "Aren't you happy to see me?" "Of course. I wasn't expecting you." He quickly added, "Wait here. I'll get a hotel for you so you can rest." Jessica's heart skipped. "Hotel? Why would I stay in a hotel?" "Daniel, isn't this our house?" she asked, confused. Before Daniel could answer, the front door creaked open again. A young woman, barefoot and pregnant, stepped out. Her hand rested gently on her belly. "Who is she, Daniel?" the woman asked, her eyes narrowing at Jessica. Jessica's heart sank. Her world cracked open. She turned to Daniel, her voice shaking. "Who is she, Daniel?" Daniel stood frozen, sweat beading on his forehead. I can explain. You told me you were single. You took my money. You said this was our house." Jessica's voice broke, and tears blurred her vision. The woman stepped back, muttering something under her breath. Jessica didn't wait. She turned, her chest tight with burning anger and disbelief, her hands trembling. She walked away, her steps unsteady, and caught a cab to the nearest hotel. She slammed the door behind her and collapsed onto the bed, her mind spinning with the reality of 10 years of loyalty thrown away. She stared at the cracked ceiling, her thoughts a whirlwind of doubt. If Daniel could betray her this easily, what about her family and her friends? She thought of the money she had sent home, of the sacrifices she had made. And then, a quiet resolve settled in her chest. She would test them. She would bury the truth, pretend she was broke, pretend she had been deported. She would see who loved her, the person, not the provider. Her heart heavy, she picked up her phone and dialed her father. "Daddy, I'm back in Uganda. Can you come pick me up?" Jessica stood on the roadside, clutching a faded duffel bag. She wore secondhand clothes, deliberately wrinkled and stained. Her hair, usually styled with care, was tucked under an old scarf. She looked nothing like the woman she had become. A rusty car pulled up, and her father stepped out. His face showed confusion. "Jessica." She nodded, her gaze low. "It's me, Daddy." Without a word, he opened the door. The drive home was silent, thick with unasked questions. At the house, her mother rushed out with open arms, but stopped short when she saw Jessica's condition. "My God, what happened?" Inside, Jessica sat on the couch, her hands trembling in her lap. "I was deported," she lied. "They accused me of a crime I didn't commit. Everything I worked for, it's gone." Her mother began to cry. Her father paced, his jaw tight with anger. "You mean you didn't bring anything back?" he asked, his voice cold. Jessica shook her head, eyes downcast. "Nothing." Silence filled the room. Later, when her younger brother came home, he stared at her as if she were a stranger. "Is this really you?" he asked. "I thought you'd come back with big cars, designer bags. What happened?" Jessica forced a smile, her lips stiff. "Life happened." In the days that followed, the house grew cold. Her father barely spoke to her. Her brothers muttered behind closed doors. Only her mother remained gentle, quietly serving Jessica the little food they had left. The warmth that had filled the house, when Jessica's money flowed through it, was now gone. Exactly 1 week later, her father sat across from her in the living room. "So, what's your plan?" he asked, his voice hard. "I don't know yet," Jessica answered, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I just need some time." Her father's voice hardened. "You've been here long enough. I can't have a grown woman sitting around, crying, and doing nothing. We expected better. Daddy, I just got back. I need to find my feet." "No, you need to leave. 1 more week, then you go." Her lips quivered, but she held back the tears. "But this is the house I bought for you." His face twisted with frustration. "You're not the only one struggling. I built my business with my own hands. And I sent you money every month. Well, that's done now, isn't it?" Her brothers, hearing the conversation, echoed the same coldness. "Auntie Jessica is too stingy," one whispered when he thought she wasn't listening. "Now she's broke and wants to eat our food." The pain in her chest was sharper than anything Daniel had caused. On her last day in the house, her father tossed her bag outside. "You can't stay here crying every day. I didn't cause your deportation." Only her mother dared approach. She pressed 300,000 Ugandan shillings into Jessica's hand. "If I had power in this house, I'd let you stay. Take this, my daughter. Please don't hate me." Tears flowed down Jessica's cheeks. "Thank you, Mama." And just like that, Jessica walked away from the house she bought for her family, now treated like a burden they never asked for. Jessica dragged her bag along the sidewalk, the weight of more than just exhaustion on her shoulders. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. Was she just a wallet to them? Had they ever loved her, or just what she gave them? She stopped near a rundown hotel, ready to spend her last night in tears. But then, a familiar voice called her name. "Jessica." She turned, and there stood Victoria, the girl she once helped with university fees. Victoria, carrying a plastic bag of groceries, rushed over and embraced her tightly. "My God, Jessica, is it really you?" Jessica broke down right there in the street. She cried into Victoria's shoulder, years of sacrifice, silence, and betrayal spilling out in wordless sobs. Victoria didn't pull away. "Come," she said softly. "Come home with me." Victoria led her through dusty streets to a modest old house, chipped paint and creaky wood, but warm. The scent of deep-fried mandatsi and roasted groundnuts filled the air. Victoria introduced her to her parents, their clothes faded, but their smiles filled with kindness. "This is Jessica," Victoria said. The woman who paid my final year school fees when no one else would. She's the reason I graduated. Victoria's mother gasped, then hugged Jessica tightly. We've prayed for you. Even though we never met you, you saved our daughter's future. That night, the small room was dim, but the warmth from the floor and the laughter made it feel like home. They sat cross-legged, sharing what little they had. The meal was simple, but they ate it with thanks. The cup of water was passed from hand to hand, and soft laughter filled the air. Jessica looked around, her heart swelling. There wasn't much, but here, in the quiet simplicity, she had never felt wealthier. In the weeks that followed, Jessica remained in their home, curling up on the mat beside Victoria each night. The rough edges of the mat didn't bother her. They went to the salon together each day. The air was always filled with the hum of their work, and though business came slowly, their smiles never faded. They worked side by side, finding joy in the small victories, in the laughter that came from sharing space. At night, they would sit together, talking about their dreams, or sometimes just lying in silence. Jessica kept her secret, Daniel, the fake deportation, the money, locked away. She wasn't ready to share it yet. She needed time to heal. One evening, as they walked home together, the last rays of the sun painted the sky in soft orange hues. Jessica turned to Victoria. The air was warm, and the street was quiet except for their footsteps. You didn't ask me for anything, Jessica said, her voice low, but filled with meaning. You just opened your door. What? Victoria's lips curled into a gentle smile, and she shrugged. Because you did the same for me, she replied. And when you help someone, it shouldn't come with a receipt. You just do it, and let God take care of the rest. Jessica felt her chest tighten, and her heart swelled with emotion. She gazed at Victoria, feeling a rush of gratitude. You have no idea how much that means, she whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. Victoria looked back at her, her eyes kind. I have an idea, she said softly. That night, Jessica lay on the floor, the thin mat beneath her offering little comfort, but it was enough. Above her, the peeling ceiling sagged under its own weight. The walls had cracks that seemed to stretch forever. But in that moment, as the quiet of the house wrapped around her, she realized something. Home wasn't a place. It wasn't about blood or comfort or even success. Home was where hearts opened without asking for anything in return. The next morning, Jessica woke with a new clarity. It felt like a storm had passed, leaving her breathless but relieved. She had seen enough. The people who had turned their backs on her when she had nothing, they had failed. But Victoria hadn't. Victoria had passed the test. And now it was time for Jessica to show her truth. She turned her gaze to the mat beside her. Victoria was still asleep, curled in a wrapper, her chest rising and falling with each breath. The ceiling above them sagged, and the walls were cracked. But in this house, in the stillness of the night, Jessica had felt more love than she had in the mansion she'd built for her own family. She whispered to herself, barely audible, everything changes. That afternoon, Jessica made plans. She rented a clean car and dressed in the ragged clothes she had been wearing for weeks. No one asked questions. Victoria and her parents simply followed her. Where are we going? Victoria asked, a smile tugging at her lips, her voice full of curiosity. You'll see. Jessica replied, her own smile a faint curve. She drove them to the house, the one Daniel had claimed he built with her money. The white gate stood tall, unchanged by time or betrayal. As they pulled up, memories rushed through Jessica's mind. The pregnant woman, the lies, the ache in her chest. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she stood tall, her expression steady. Victoria gasped as she looked at the house. This place is beautiful. Why are we here? She asked, her voice full of wonder. Jessica smiled faintly and handed her a folded piece of paper. What's this? Victoria asked, her fingers trembling as she unfolded it. The deed of ownership, Jessica said quietly, her voice soft but firm. Victoria blinked, her eyes widening in disbelief. This house, it's yours now, Jessica said. Victoria looked at the paper again, her hands shaking. What? No, I don't understand, she stammered. Jessica nodded, her voice steady. I won a court case. The man I once trusted took my money and lied, but I took it back. This house, the one I thought was built with love, now belongs to me. And I'm giving it to you. Victoria's parents stood still, their eyes wide with shock. Her mother's hands trembled, and her father sat on the steps, speechless. But why? Victoria whispered, tears starting to form in her eyes. Jessica took a deep breath and looked at her friend. Because you loved me with nothing, she said. When I had nothing, you gave me shelter, food, and kindness. You never asked for anything in return, and I wanted to see who would stand by me when I had nothing left. My family failed me. Daniel failed me. But you passed. Victoria's tears began to flow freely. She rushed forward and hugged Jessica tightly. I didn't do it to get anything back, I swear, she cried. I know, Jessica said softly, holding her close. That's why you're the only one who deserves everything. Victoria's parents knelt on the ground, their voices breaking with prayer. May God lift you, Jessica. May your name never fall. May your cup overflow. Tears blurred Jessica's vision as she cried with them. Then she took Victoria's hand in hers, her voice filled with promise. I didn't come back broke, Jessica said. I came back to build a bigger life. And I want you to be part of it. Come with me to the U.S. We'll build together, for real. Victoria stared at her, shocked, her eyes wide with disbelief. You mean it? She asked. I've never meant anything more, Jessica replied, her voice unwavering. As the sun dipped behind the white walls of the house, which had once been a symbol of betrayal, it now stood as a beacon of redemption, friendship, and a future that no one could ever take away from them. Weeks passed. Jessica moved quietly, with purpose. She had money, she had legal power, she had clarity. But there was still something missing, closure. One morning, she got into a car and drove to the house she had bought for her parents, the same house where her father had thrown her out. This time, she wore her finest clothes, no disguises, no tricks. She had nothing left to hide. Her father's business had collapsed. He had borrowed money, sent it to a fake company promising double returns. The scammers had vanished, and with them, his pride. The bank was knocking at the door, demanding the house. Inside, her mother sat crying, her face older, her eyes tired. Her brothers sat silently, broken, and her father, once a proud man, sat slumped in a chair, a shadow of his former self. When Jessica walked in, the silence was heavy, like a storm just before it breaks. Her mother rushed to her, tears in her eyes. Jessica, you came. Thank God. Please help us. The bank wants to take the house. Her father coughed, avoiding her gaze. They said we have 1 week to pay, or we lose everything. Jessica took a long look around. The house she had funded, the family she had lifted, the people who had turned their backs on her when she had nothing. She sat down, her posture calm, but her eyes were sharp. Let me tell you something, she said, her voice steady but cutting. I was never deported. I lied. I wanted to see who truly loved me, who would treat me the same when I had nothing. Her mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You lied? She whispered. Jessica nodded, locking eyes with her father. Yes, she said, and I saw everything I needed. The minute I stopped giving, you threw me out like garbage. After all I did, after all I gave. Her father tried to speak, but his words didn't come. I built this house, Jessica continued, standing now, her voice growing stronger. I paid for your comfort. I put your sons through school. I gave you my blood. And the one time I asked for shelter, you gave me the street. Tears ran down her mother's face. We were scared. We didn't know how to help you. No, Jessica replied, her voice firm. You didn't want to help me. You wanted what I could give. That's not love. That's convenience. Silence filled the room. Then Jessica reached into her bag and dropped an envelope onto the table. Here, she said. Enough to pay off the bank loan, and an extra amount for you, Mama. But after this, don't call me unless you remember who I am, not what I give. Her mother dropped to the floor, her knees hitting the cold ground as she grabbed Jessica's leg. Her fingers clung tightly, her voice shaking. I'm sorry. We failed you. Jessica stood still, her eyes steady. Her two brothers stood nearby, not saying a word, their faces full of shame. They didn't look up. Their father slowly raised his head. His eyes were swollen and red, like he hadn't slept for days. His lips parted, voice low. You were always the strongest. We were just too blind to see it. Jessica looked at each one of them. Then, without another word, she turned. Her back straight, her chin up. I have people who treat me like family, even without blood. And now, I'm going to build with them. She took a step, then another. Her feet moved with purpose, her suitcase rolling behind her. No one reached out. No one dared. At the airport, people rushed around them. Luggage rolled. Babies cried. Voices echoed through the speakers. But in the middle of it all, Jessica stood still. Her grip was firm on her single suitcase, her eyes calm. Victoria stood next to her, holding her passport with both hands like it was the most precious thing in the world. Her fingers shook slightly. She kept looking down at it, then back up at the crowd. "I still can't believe this is happening," she said, her voice soft. Jessica turned her head, her lips lifting into a smile. "Believe it. You earned it." Weeks before, Jessica had moved quietly. She filled out the papers, found the right people, paid what needed to be paid, all without saying much. She had remembered how her life changed because of grace. And now, she was doing the same for Victoria. "I never even dreamed of going to the US," Victoria whispered, eyes wide. "You didn't need to dream," Jessica said. "You had the heart, and that's more than most." Behind them, Uganda waited in silence. The land they knew, the place that shaped them. Beautiful, yes, but full of hard memories. Jessica didn't look back. She didn't need to. Daniel was now in prison. The court had ruled against him, and the internet exploded. Videos, articles, hashtags, everywhere. Her story was on everyone's lips. Women from all over sent her messages. Long messages. Some cried in voice notes. They thanked her. But Jessica didn't read most of them. She hadn't done it for fame. She had done it for herself. For the women who gave everything and were thrown away like nothing. And for her family. After she paid the debt they had all carried for years, she left quietly. Just like they had once pushed her out of their lives. Her phone rang sometimes. Her mother's name would appear on the screen. But Jessica rarely answered. Her heart was different now. Softer, but stronger. She had already cried enough. Now, she was walking in truth. The voice on the speaker called their flight. People lined up. Jessica and Victoria stepped forward. Victoria turned her face to her. Her voice was full of wonder. "Jessica, how did you become so strong?" Jessica paused. Her eyes glowed with something old and deep. Her smile carried a story. "By being broken again and again. But every time, I chose not to stay shattered." They stepped onto the plane. Jessica leaned her head back as it took off. The clouds passed by the window. Her chest felt light. The weight she had carried for 10 years, it was finally gone. In the US, time moved fast. Jessica got back to work. Her hands braided, trimmed, treated. Her ideas grew, and so did the salon. One became two, then another. She didn't do it alone. She called Victoria to the table, not to follow, but to lead. She gave her part of the business. Not a title, not a wage, a stake, a real seat. Victoria didn't disappoint. She worked with fire in her bones, just like Jessica once had. Together, they didn't just run a salon. They created something bigger. A bond. A sisterhood. One evening, they stood inside their newest branch. The mirrors sparkled under golden lights. The fresh paint on the walls still smelled new. Above the stations, a logo shone. Crown Beauty. Jessica plus Victoria. Jessica stood frozen. Her throat tightened. Tears filled her eyes, slowly sliding down her cheek. She stared at the name. It was no longer hers alone. It belonged to both of them. That night, the two of them locked the salon doors. The streets were quiet, the evening breeze soft. They walked side by side under the stars. Jessica lifted her head, looked up at the sky, and whispered a quiet prayer. She didn't ask for more money. She didn't ask for fame. She asked for more moments like this. Moments where her heart felt full, where the pain made sense, where the girl who once braided hair under a mango tree could smile, not because she made it, but because she helped someone else believe they could too. And that was the real reward. If you were in Jessica's position, would you accept your parents back? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below to share your thoughts. See you in the next video, and don't forget to share it with friends and family who love heartfelt tales.